So good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. Hold on one second. I'm going to close my door because I'm getting a little reverb. Okay, that is better. So good afternoon, everyone. And if you did not know, welcome to the unofficial first day of Child Abuse Prevention Month, which makes this informational session even more appropriate. And we didn't really plan it that way, but it kind of happened that way. So I am Sika Rose Green, and I am the Executive Director of the Children's Services Council of Leon County. We have been in existence for just about, not quite 3 years, and are in the process of accepting applications for various programming under our Family Support Services strategic framework. So this informational session is to give you what we believe would be pertinent facts about the application process for the request for proposals for family strengthening and parent education. So the idea of this programming is to award funding to programs for a 2-year contract to be able to provide family strengthening services in the form of group. It could be individual. It can be maybe a new format that you have discovered works, and parent education. And so that parent education would be surrounding the proven factors that go into improving outcomes for families, children, and youth. Ideally, what we would love to be able to do is reduce the propensity for or reoccurrence of any child maltreatment. And that could especially be for families that are either involved with dependency, so that would be the dependency system through Department of Children and Families with the state, or maybe they are just right on the edge. And so there has been some concern expressed, but they have not formally gone into the dependency system. We are looking for these services to be provided not only at a specific place, meaning a center, community center, whatever it is you propose in your proposal, but most importantly, that the services can go to the family. When you're looking at the target zip codes in this proposal, we really want to emphasize the ability to go to the family to build that relationship and thereby provide those services. So with that, I am going to turn it back over to Holly McPhail, who will go through the application process with you. Of course, I will stay on. Any questions that you have, you can either hold them until the end, or you can begin putting them in the chat. We will answer them on this informational session as it is being recorded, and it will be available later. But we eventually will compile those questions and the answers and place on the website underneath the information for this particular procurement. So I encourage you to really listen closely. Please, please, please ask questions. And I just want to commend you for being on the informational session, because that just gives you that much more of an advantage when you go to complete your RFP. So with that, I will turn it over to Holly.
All right, thank you so much, Sika. I really appreciate that. I'm Holly McPhail. I'm a Special Projects Manager here with the Children's Services Council of Leon County. The first thing I want to do is actually walk you through where to find the RFA and where the application portal button will be and will open later today. Then I'll walk you through exactly the portal and some of the questions and what that looks like and where you can find additional information. Then we'll be sharing and kind of talking about some of the differences between this application, being that it is our first long-term funding and opportunity, our first kind of long-term investment opportunity, and kind of walk through like what's going to look a little bit different. Then I'll turn it over to my colleague Stephanie to talk about what we're calling the level of evidence, or kind of the evidence of effectiveness, to really walk through what that means for this particular procurement. And then we'll talk about some opportunities of reporting, various things that you'll be required to do, and how the application portal is a little bit different. And then we will close it up with those questions and answers. I do want to remind everyone to please keep your phones on mute while we progress through this process, and that we will do the questions and answers through the chat and potentially open it up for other opportunities that way. With that, I want to start first by going to our website. You actually see the inside of our, just a second. So if you come to our website, where we post all of our funding procurements, there's a couple of ways of getting there, but we made this nice convenient button right here on the front page to find out funding opportunities. When you click on that, it will take you into, it's going nice and slow because I'm streaming. It'll take you into all of our funding opportunities, and you can kind of see here the ones that have closed and the ones that are opening. Are currently open. So just click on the item and it expands everything for it, gives you a little brief overview and a reminder of when it is due. Eventually the portal will open, and this will switch to enter portal. That's what it will switch to in just a moment. And this is where you can access and download that full funding announcement. I do want to remind everyone that the Monday, May 8th at 6 p.m. is when the portal will close. We asked a couple of people that had requested that extra hour, was very helpful, so we decided to include it for this one as well. Give me just one moment. Working from home means that my child's in the other room blasting his music. He heard me and shut the door for me instead. Fantastic. So a couple of pieces that I want to point out on this particular site. This is where you will go to find access to all of the technical assistance that we are providing. And at the conclusion of today's portal tour, this button will click or switch from register, this link will switch from register to watch. So you can access a copy of this recording at any point by clicking on this once we come back and change that link over. This is also where you'll find different resources that you will need to complete your application, including our fiscal guidelines, our security policy, an easy link for our needs assessment. And we provide that to you so that you can kind of all find everything in one place. This is also where we will post our FAQs document at the conclusion of not only this training, but when the window for questions and answers closes, we compile including the ones that we answered here today. They'll be found right here on this site. And this is true for all of our procurement. So anytime that you have a question, you want to know what's open, you're looking for the link, you're looking for a resource, if you just come right to that homepage again and you click funding opportunities, it's going to bring you right here to this page. With that, I'm going to actually pull up the RFA itself, or excuse me, the RFP itself, and just kind of walk you through it. It provides a brief overview of specifically what we are trying to accomplish with this particular procurement. And I do want to clarify that this is the first of 3 funding opportunities that will be available from the Children's Services Council to kind of coming under this family supports umbrella. It is our goal to have all of the decisions made about these procurements with contracting beginning on August 1st of this year. And as I stated, these are long-term investments. So this particular investment, we are seeking to issue multiple contracts for a 26-month contracts with an opportunity for renewal at the conclusion of those. We will talk through what that reporting structure looks like as we progress through today's informational session. Again, this is going to provide information about intent, and then it's going to talk information about eligibility. unlike previous previous funding opportunities that we have done, the only true piece of eligibility is that you are legally authorized to do business in the state of Florida, but we are requiring that you identify one of two service lines. All the requirements are the same for either service line, but how they are judged are different and how they are funded are different. The first one is research supported programs, and the second is grassroots. You have to self-identify which type of entity you are through the application process, and that's how you will be split. Now, my colleague Stephanie is going to be talking in great detail about this when we swap it over to her in just a few moments. So just keep that in mind, that you really need to understand, again, that level of evidence, because that is what we're trying to invest and build with these investments. So you'll find in here the application process, all the information you need to know about how your application will be scored. There's information in here about the complete timeline. There's also information about our capacity building services that are available, which we will wrap up with at the very end of today. I see a couple of our partners on with us now. We have some information about the framework that we are going to be using to measure effectiveness. And again, my colleague Stephanie will be covering all of that when we transition to that section. And then there's just a lot of information in here about the very specific requirements that you will be held to should you be awarded. So we provide this in advance so everyone has it and you understand the level of scrutiny and the level of expectation that the Children's Services Council is going to have should you be selected for award. It is our hope and intention that we will have intent to awards issued by the middle of June, so that you would have at least 6 weeks to, or about 6 weeks to start ramping up and planning for programming. Again, we want to kind of just remind everyone, some people call it the cone of silence, or kind of it's technically a lobbying prohibition, but in essence, what this is that you please don't call staff or members of the council to advocate for your position, or once the evaluators are published, their names are published, calling them and kind of asking them for advice, guidance, or kind of sharing information. We do have it set up through our capacity builders that you can access assistance with your application and kind of understanding intent, but that fully removes staff and council members from that kind of being able to make the unbiased decisions about proposals that are submitted. The second part of the actual RFP document is what we're calling our statement of work. This really goes into the theoretical underpinnings of why we're investing in this space, and has a lot of really great information that should be helpful for you as you prepare your application. The one piece that I really want to point out is this idea of the protective factors framework. As Sika said, this is the beginning of Child Abuse Prevention Month, and a lot of the work that we're doing in this space for strengthening families is measured through family stability and the prevention of child abuse. And the protective factors framework is a national model that's really been proven effective in reducing child maltreatment. So in addition to kind of listing them all here so that you have them and understand them, we'll also be providing training so that if you've never heard of the protective factors framework and you're curious to learn a little bit more, those links are available on our website for you to find. The last kind of section, so the statement of work also goes into the evidence of effectiveness. And again, Stephanie's going to walk through this. It talks about the program design that we are looking for, and this mirrors what is going to be in the application portal. So when you're going through the RFA and you're looking at the portal, we strongly recommend that you start here by understanding what you're going to be asked for and thinking through all of these answers before you even enter into the portal. It also highlights our data collection requirements and our performance indicators that we will go over, as well as our reporting requirements. Now, the second exhibit attached to our RFP is Exhibit 2, which is our proposal evaluation criteria. This was something requested from many of our providers. They want to know exactly how their applications will be rated. And so that's what Exhibit 2 is here for you. And by scrolling down here, you'll kind of see exactly the elements that our evaluators are going to be looking for. So this is published for you so that you can have a really great understanding of why each category on the application is what it is. With that, I'm going to actually show you the portal now. Again, it's not going to open until later today after we conduct all of our training sessions. So I'm going to show you kind of the behind the scenes version, if you will. I want to start by saying for our request for proposals that we have learned that you can only, while you can save and come back to your individual application, it needs to be on the same device, or else you might not be able to kind of access it. We also have learned with this process that trying to complete an application from your phone or your tablet does not work. It will not save your information, and that is because of the types of browsers that are required to store cookies are not the same on a mobile device or a tablet versus a computer. So we strongly recommend that unless you're going to do it all in one fell swoop and be able to attach, and you're pretty savvy that way, to not use your phone or a tablet when completing your application, but rather a PC or a laptop or whatever it is that you're using to be able to connect. You'll also see that it's at multiple times when you go kind of to the next section. It gives you the opportunity to save, but it reminds you to please have your cookies enabled and all of that. Finally, at the completion of submitting an application, you'll get an email with a copy of your application attached to it. If you do not receive an email with a copy, that either means you did not use the right, a correct email address, or you've just saved it. You haven't actually gone through the full process of completing the application. So after you click begin, it will ask you if you are legally authorized to conduct business in the state of Florida. If you are not, it will actually kick you out of the application. Most of you, hopefully, that are pursuing this, hear that loud and clear, that we want you to be legally authorized to conduct business in Florida. Click yes, hit next, and then it'll take you into your organizational profile. This kind of top section is just who are you and who is the primary contact for the grant application. This individual is the person who is going to receive confirmation emails to be able to save and come back. This individual is, when I say confirmation emails, like from the Children's Services Council. So notification that your application was received, that wherever it goes in the process, when we start sending out invitations for your different workshop opportunities, things like that, all of that will be built into the organizational, will be built into this system. So that's what we're looking for, is just our primary contact. And then it's going to ask information about just basic information about your organization. When was it incorporated? What's the brief description? Providing some kind of your tax ID and your tax status. We're going to ask questions about your current operating budget, sources of income, and if you've ever been a recipient or even applied for funds from the Children's Services Council before. Again, when you'll click save, you'll see here, if you hit save, it'll actually pop up with a window to have you enter in your email address. But if you click next, it just definitely reminds you throughout the entire time, every single time that you progress, you'll see this little reminder about how to save your application or how to get technical assistance. We then ask you to identify your evidence category in terms of that research supported or grassroots. Whichever one that you choose actually takes you to the same place, which is program design. This is where we are really looking for you to describe the community need that your proposal seeks to address, giving us a detailed description of the proposed program, services, activities, and to identify how many children or youth that you anticipate serving exclusively with CSC Leon funds. This number that you put in is going to be very important in calculating our cost per unit benefit cost comparative analysis. So this is what you will be held contractually to. If you say you're going to serve 100 families or 100 children or 100 youth, depending upon what your program structure looks like, this is what we're going to hold you to should you be funded. And so just keep that in mind that this is exclusively with CSC Leon funds. The infusion of that money, how is it going to help your program get established or expand your current existing footprint? We also want you to describe in detail the ages of the children, where they're located. So in essence, where, when, and how often the program is going to be available to those children and families. And if you're going to provide any accommodation to help address transportation barriers, as Sika said at the very beginning of the training, that like our hope and intent is to really be in these neighborhoods, be placed in the neighborhoods, sometimes home-based services, if that's the model of your program, or maybe it's school-based services, if that's the model of your program. So we really want to get a great idea of where the services are actually located, when and how often things are occurring, and how families can actually access them. We then kind of go into this section on duration and frequency to really understand how often families are being touched, and then to describe any fees that are charged to families. Let us be clear that it is our intent to only fund programs that are offered free of charge to families or very low cost. We understand sometimes like a registration fee to hold a spot in a program gets that initial buy-in so that families actually show up and participate. And that might be something that's a part of your model, but by and large, our intent is to not have any financial barriers for any families, children, or youth to participate in the programs that we are funding. The next section is going to be about the staffing plan. What we're really looking for with the staffing plan is to make sure that you've thought through all of the requirements for the funding opportunity, specifically it's not only being managed by and led by a competent team, but that you've thought through each of the steps as it relates to data collection, marketing, reporting, actually providing the services that you describe, and making kind of all the administrative stuff that's involved with it. We want to be very, very clear on who's doing what activities, and so that we can feel confident that the staffing plan will support them in being completed. So it will ask you to identify the program administrator's full name. That could be the CEO of your organization if that's the model that fits you, or it might be a program administrator, might be like a program head within a larger agency. But then of course, who is the primary manager, the kind of the the individual who's doing the day in and day out work of managing the proposed services. And then it does ask you to kind of describe the full staffing structure in a narrative form, as well as background requirements and expectations for staff, especially those that will work directly with children and youth. And then it kind of talks into, again, how you're going to use those staff to do the marketing and to do the data collection requirements, as well as reporting. Now, as I'm going through this, you might be wondering, this all looks like a lot of narrative form, and that is true. And then I'll explain why when we get to the very last, the last page of the application. The next section is about program evidence. This is where we're going to ask you to describe your program's evidence-based and/or theory, and to really define what successful completion from your program looks like for participants. And like that's going to be very crucial as well, because that will feed into, should you be awarded, the actual your outcomes that you'll be held to contractually, is based on how you define what successful completion of a program looks like. We'll then ask you to describe your program's logic model. Again, we're looking for high levels of evidence. And if all of these words, and it seems new to you, you're not quite sure what your logic model is or what your evidence base is, again, in just a moment, I'll turn it over to my colleague, Stephanie, who is our research manager, to describe those and to let you know where and when you can access technical assistance should this be new for you. And finally, we will ask how many years you've been operating this program. The reason why this is in this section as opposed to up at the very beginning of the organizational profile, again, comes down to the separation of the service lines for our research supported and our grassroots. If you don't have an evidence base for your program, but you have been operating for more than 5 years here in Leon County, then you would be eligible to continue with your proposal. But we have it here because that's the differentiating factor is that level of evidence. Again, you'll click save and or next to go on to the next part. And this is really where we're going to be diving into your budget. So what we're looking for here is exactly how much you're asking for, and then for you to identify that cost per unit calculation. Earlier, when I said how many families or children or youth will you serve, this is where we're going to kind of calculate that. So your program model might be based on a child, and like that's the primary unit that you're using. Like maybe your services are only for that. It is family strengthening, and that might be how your model calculates its impact or what's intended. But it might be that you're working in a dyad, a parent-child relationship, and that's really what you're looking for. In that case, that your measurement or your unit would be a family. So you define if it's child, youth, or family, and what you've identified as that number. Again, I said 100, just to kind of start with as an example here. That's what you're going to take your total amount requested budget. Let's say you are asking for $10,000 and you are going to serve 100 families. Now, that would be an amazing calculation of $100 a family. I'm guessing that that's not what your program is, but that's what we're looking for you to identify specifically your total amount that you're requesting and how many families you say that you're going to serve with that. You divide that together, and that's your cost per unit calculation. In the future, these will be automatically calculated when we have our full system, our application system that we're building out. This still is just our temporary one. But until then, we're looking for that cost per unit calculation. And if your math is wrong, we will correct it. Then we want you to provide in just a brief narrative way an overview of how your funds will be used if awarded. Then we go into the fun part, and you'll notice that all of these have not been required, and that allows you to move backwards and forward in the application to do all of your written narrative. Then you get to this page, and this is where you were required to upload all of your attachments. The items that we are looking for are your current division of corporations business registration. So this is what we call SunBiz. We're looking for your current one, not just a screenshot of where you found that you are registered, but actually your SunBiz registration that's certified through the application period. The second thing that we, the only upload that we're not requiring, but it is here, is your IRS determination letter. So if you are a nonprofit, then we ask that you upload your determination letter. This procurement and funding opportunity is open to any business type. However, in the case of a tie, preference will be given to our nonprofit partners. So please, if you have that, upload that here. The third attachment is your current certificate of insurance or proof of liability. And let me share that we are not looking for your entire policy. We're just looking for that cover, that declarations page. We've had applications in the past where quite literally they have shared 90 pages of an application. The next piece is your most recent operating budget. So that is your annual operating budget for your organization as it is right now. That's what we're looking for in terms of that financial stability, to show us kind of like, what is your budget? What does that look like? And then a separate attachment is your budget request. And we do have a required template. It is different this year, not this year, for this funding opportunity. It's an annual budget as opposed to the summer budget. So if you have a budget template that you have seen or you've downloaded from previous procurement opportunities, know that you will need to use the new budget request template that has a couple of different requirements in it. And we will be providing some technical assistance training specifically around budgets so that you are able to understand what we are looking for. We'll also ask you for a current organizational chart of your organization, and then a proposed organizational chart. We anticipate that applicants that are implementing new programs or expanding existing programs, that will come with staff. So we want to be able to show this is what you look like now, this is what you'll look like should you be funded. And then you'll have the opportunity also to submit up to 3 letters of support. And I want to just pause on the letters of support because it's integral for our selection committee to know that your program or that you have support from the neighborhoods that you're seeking to serve or the systems that you're trying to influence. We've had applications in the past where letters of support were not included, and I want to be very clear with the criteria for applying, that having that evidence that you are connected is actually one of the critical components it's actually one of the scored components in our evaluation for selecting who we will fund. Once you have all of that and they're uploaded, you'll be able to hit next. You won't be able to hit next if they're not uploaded. So you will never get to that submit button unless you have all of these documents loaded up for you. Once you get there, you'll have the opportunity to choose your proposal presentation. I've just realized that I have not updated these, so I'll make sure to do that before we click publish. And then you'll get to your application submission. And these are also required fields, and we've made them this way as a reminder. Go back and thoroughly review every field before that attachment page and make sure you have an answer in every single one of them. We did not require, again, each of those fields so that you would be able to go back and go back and forth throughout the application to get everything full. But we ask you to please go back and make sure that the content is accurate and is complete on the date that you are submitting. This is also the start of your kind of declarations or your signature page where you certify that you are authorized, in fact, to submit this on behalf of the organization. If you answer no to either of these, it will actually kick you out of the, it will in fact kick you out of the application before you can ever even get to the submit button. But if you say yes, it will take you to your signature page where it's asking you to type in and date. And then when you have this big, beautiful submit button, that's what you're going to click. At this point, before you hit submit, you can hit print, and it will print to PDF a version of your application. Know too that when you hit submit, if your email address was correctly input into that primary contact, it's going to send you a copy of your full submission, again, as a PDF attachment, so that you will have that. With that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because that is the application portal, but there are a few other pieces that we want to spend time talking with you about. And at this point, I would like to invite my colleague, Stephanie, to come up to the table. I'll ask you to unmute, Stephanie. All right. And Stephanie's going to talk a lot about that evidence level that we were really talking about and how this is different from previous applications.
Well, thank you, Holly. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you virtually. If you've taken time to read through the entire RFP, you may notice that data collection and reporting requirements are rather rigorous. And my role is to help you understand these requirements if you are selected for funding. We are charged with demonstrating that each of our programmatic investments provides a measurable return on investment. We hope that through this process, you can enhance your program's quality using the knowledge gained in the trainings that we're providing and the data collected to measure your program's outcomes. At the conclusion of each funded program, we will be communicating to the community what impact these programs have had on children and families served. So it's very important. So now I'm going to ask Holly if she would mind sharing the CDC website as I begin to talk about evidence of effectiveness. So it's our intent to fund programs that have empirical evidence demonstrating their claims. Level of research evidence exists upon a continuum, which starts with the highest standards of program research design, reproducibility, and effectiveness for targeted participant outcomes. This is typically referred to as evidence-based or well-supported. The second tier of evidence includes research-based programs or supported. If you look at the CDC continuum there, that's the second column, which also demonstrate a high level of effectiveness. Programs in these two categories are based on sound theory. They've been evaluated in at least 2 well-conducted studies, and they've demonstrated significant short and or long-term positive effects. Excuse me. The third tier includes promising practices, which are programs that are based on sound theory. They've been rigorously evaluated and they demonstrate some level of effectiveness. Now, on page 9 of the RFP, we have listed a sampling of programs that meet one of these 3 tiers of evidence. If you're not certain where your program may fall on this continuum, or to learn more about the various levels of research evidence, you're welcome to visit this website, and we'll post the link in the chat at the end of the presentation. So, and another thing I would like to point out is this wonderful START assessment in the upper, for me, left-hand corner. Yeah. So if you go through the START Your Self assessment, it will ask you a series of questions, and you can determine exactly where you fit along this continuum. I think that's a fabulous tool, and I just wanted to point it out. And unless you are already implementing a program that meets one of these criteria, you probably are not going to register very high up there in terms of the quality of the research, but it's great to help you understand how that research evidence is established. So a portion of the funding may also be used for emerging grassroots programs. Programs which fit this criterion are not required to have a research foundation, but they must have been in existence and have been providing documented family strengthening or parent education services in Leon County a minimum of 5 years. They must also provide a logic model as part of the application and some evidence that the existing program has delivered measurable outcomes. Outcomes of this nature might include participant survey results or long-term participant follow-up. Now, testimonials may be provided as supportive evidence, but they are not alone sufficient to establish participant outcomes. It's our hope that we may help providers begin to understand how to incorporate research and best practices into your programs and demonstrate the measurable effectiveness to better support those you serve. But it also will set the stage for you being eligible for other forms of funding as well. So we hope this turns out to be a win-win situation. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about theory of change and logic models those are addressed under the program design. So we reference both the theory of change and a program's logic model. And for all funded programs, we expect applicants to provide their program's logic model. If your organization has a theory of change, this will further support your application. And I'm going to ask Holly as soon as she's off the phone to post the logic model slide to help show you what they look like. But I'll start with theory of change. So briefly, a theory of change is a fundamental component of any large-scale social change effort and serves as the basis for a meaningful measurement. A clear theory of change helps to strengthen strategies and maximize results by identifying the work to be undertaken, the expected markers of progress, and the pathways to achieve your desired goals. And if you want to learn more, the Annie E. Casey Foundation provides extensive guidance on creating a theory of change. It's fabulous. So On to a logic model. So a logic model is a type of theory of change that's most often used when actions involve direct services or a discrete intervention for a specific group of people that is implemented in a very prescribed manner. A logic model articulates all the elements of a program from, if you look on the far left of this chart, the inputs, which would be your resources, through your activities to your outcomes and so on. It organizes these graphically in a very easy to read method that implies a logic between their parts, thus the name logic model. Following, there's the logic model itself. So I'm not going to go through each of these elements, but I think it's fairly straightforward. But the model breaks down a program into two categories: the planned work, the first two columns, and then your intended results, which are the following four columns. It lays out the logic of the program in a series of hypotheses. So if we have these resources, we can engage in these activities. And if we can engage in these activities, we can deliver these outputs, and so on and so forth. So the good news is INI, or the Institute for Nonprofit Innovation and Excellence, will be hosting a training session on creating logic models on April 13th at 1 p.m. via Zoom. And we will be dropping the link to register in the chat at the end of the presentation. So now I'm going to move into results-based accountability, or RBA, which is something I personally love. It's really simple to understand. It's very straightforward. It's a framework that we will be using to measure programmatic impact. It essentially teaches, RBA is the term I'm going to use, it teaches providers how to start with desired outcomes and work backwards to determine actionable items to achieve the change we desire. This is the opposite of a logic model. So with results-based accountability, you are articulating where your endpoint is going to be. And then you work backwards from there to build your program to meet that final goal. So RBA comprises two different levels of outcome. One is population accountability, and the second is performance accountability. Population accountability refers to an entire geographic region, such as all people in the US, all seniors in Florida, or all children in Leon County. It's bigger than any one department or program or even government. And so therefore, no single program can be expected to impact an entire population. It's not reasonable. It's only through collaborative partnerships, shared goals, and common metrics can we expect to make what RBA calls collective impact, which is how a community moves the needle. Now, on the other hand, performance accountability is about our role as managers and how well we run the programs for which we are responsible. It operates at all levels of the organization, from the smallest program up to the performance of the agency as a whole. For example, a measure of performance for a school system might be the percent of high school students who graduate within 4 years. Or for a drug treatment program, it might be the percent of clients who remain clean at program exit and 12 months post-exit. So in the latter example, we see both a short-term outcome and a long-term outcome. These are the types of measurable outcomes that we expect from our funded programs. So RBA asks three central questions, very straightforward and simple. How much did we do? How well did we do it? And is anybody better off? And while each question is important, they are not equally so. The following graphic that Holly just put up there helps to explain the concept. So number one, how much did we do? That is the least important. The most important, as you can see there, is anybody better off? So in quadrant one, and you'll see the titles above the columns and of the rows. So you're looking at quantity and quality, amount of effort, and the effect of that effort. And so like in quadrant number 1, total number of people served. That's important to know. In quadrant 2, we measure how well we provided these services, such as for a parent education program, perhaps the quality of instruction or teacher knowledge. And then that might boil down to, you might choose to measure that through the number of licensed clinical social workers who are providing direct instruction. In number 3, this could be the percentage of families who are served who are successfully diverted from entering child protective services. So that's a very brief overview of RBA. We're going to have more extensive RBA training, which we'll share with you all at a later date. But using this RBA framework, that's how we have identified the very specific performance accountability measures outlined on page 6 and 7 of this announcement. In addition to these measures, we will have mandatory site visits, which will together inform the evaluation of your program's effectiveness. And as I said previously, further training will be provided on RBA. You're going to be hearing us talk about RBA a lot in the future. So on to data collection. With regard to data collection requirements that apply to family strengthening and parent education, programs must demonstrate the capacity to adhere to data collection requirements and performance indicators listed. Okay, for example, what does that mean? For example, a data collection timeline and description of activities would be one way to demonstrate this capacity. If you would plan to administer the surveys that we are prescribing using pencil and paper and have staff manually enter the data into our system, or if you plan to administer the surveys digitally and upload the data, please provide this level of detail in your proposal. So, under data collection requirements, under item number 1, we are requiring all funded programs to collect basic demographic information, and we will specify what that includes. But we want you to start thinking about how and when you will collect this data to make the process easier. And one suggestion is to collect the required information in the initial program application materials if you have something along those lines. This way you can collect the information without going to any extra effort. And regardless how you choose to collect these data, our funded programs are required to upload the information into our Services and Activities Management System, or SAMIS, which is the acronym. Collecting and reporting the data will take staff time. And I promise you, I've been there, done that. It takes a lot of time. So please plan accordingly with your budgeting and staffing proposals. The second item under data collection is participation data. And this includes items such as the number of families enrolled, the number and percentage of sessions successfully completed, and the other relevant activities as outlined in your contract. The third item is a parent caregiver consent form to access and share records between entities such as Leon County Schools, Department of Juvenile Justice, Department of Children and Families, and we will provide this permission slip form. And while we don't require that parents give their permission as a condition of participation in our funded programs, we do require that the programs collect this form from the parent and caregiver and keep it on file. The reason for this requirement is that we plan to measure long-term outcomes of our funded programs, as I detailed a little bit before. A couple of examples of these long-term outcomes could include post-participation school delinquency and justice system involvement 12 months post-completion. So those are just a couple of examples of things that we hope to measure long-term. The fourth item is a parent caregiver satisfaction survey. And this is a very brief survey that we will provide requesting feedback on the overall experience of the family, including a level of satisfaction with program staff, whether the parent would recommend the program to other parents. Very, very simple, straightforward, just satisfaction types of questions. And these surveys can be administered in a variety of ways, but all of the results must be input into SAMIS. So, for example, SurveyMonkey and Google Forms are an inexpensive way to distribute and calculate responses automatically. of course, if you may opt for traditional pen and paper, depending on your population. So however you choose to administer this and other surveys, please budget staff time and tool expense accordingly. The fifth item includes 2 participant assessments, and these surveys must be administered at the beginning, midpoint, and end of each program. The tools that we have selected are validated instruments, and they're designed to measure gains in protective factors and family functioning. Both survey tools and the necessary training will be provided by us. And please note that manually inputting data can be very time consuming, and a little research on the front end could potentially save you a lot of time and effort. So now I'm going to, I'm very close to concluding. I'm going to move on to performance indicators. And while I'm not going to repeat what's outlined in the RFP, please note that percentiles for each of these items will automatically be calculated by SAMHSA based on the data you report. And we will be monitoring those data on a rolling basis. It is important to note that in order for your programs to qualify for contract renewal, we expect these stated targets to be met. So please look at them very carefully. So now I'm going to turn over the presentation for our final segment. And is that you, Holly? Will you be the, okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Really appreciate you outlining everything for us. Let me go. So, in the application, or excuse me, in the funding announcement for the request for proposals, on page, I guess collectively, it's page 13, you will see reporting requirements, and there are 4 that are listed there. The first is going to be a monthly activities report. We do kind of envision that the first 2 months as kind of like your startup space and initially kind of getting things going. So you won't be required to do any reporting until the 7th of the month, or excuse me, until October. And then it'll be due on the 7th of every month. Starting in October, you'll have a monthly activities report. There'll be a template that is provided for you, and then it will be built into the SAMHSA system for you to put in all the things that you're doing. Children and youth families served, numbers of meetings, number of events, types of supports, etc. That's going to be unique based on the selected proposal. So how you outline what you do will kind of reflect then what you have to input into the system. The second piece that will be required on October 7th as the first one is our data and budget report. It will then become a quarterly report due on the 7th of January, April, and July, because this first funding opportunity is a 26-month funding opportunity. It's going to have you include that brief narrative, status reports, data collection efforts, and this is also where your expenditure report is going to come into play. This will have to be received, reviewed, and approved before any additional funds are dispersed. So if you are late with your reports, or it gets kicked back to you for whatever reason, it has to, like, hear me when I say that process, received, reviewed, and approved before you receive the next allocation affiliated with the grant, with the community investment, sorry. The third report is a one-time report called a renewal eligibility assessment. It is the intent of CSC Leon for programs that are working to continue to fund them. That renewal eligibility assessment will determine if your program will continue. You can read in there some of the things that will be involved with that. There will be training provided around what that eligibility assessment should look like, but it will include a program narrative, preliminary outcome findings, as well as a SWOT analysis of the program and a budget request for continued funding beyond September 30th, 2025. Now, that assessment will determine kind of 3 outcomes. One, that you will continue to get funded and for the next cycle. A secondary alternative, or excuse me, outcome that could come from that assessment is that you have preliminary results that maybe need to go on a performance improvement plan. That might not be the exact name that we call it, but in essence, that we're not pulling funding entirely away, but definitely like maybe you need a little bit more time for it to work, or that we'll work with you to see what supports you need to be successful, or 3, you do not get funded. Those are kind of the 3 paths that would come from that eligibility assessment. If you do not submit your renewal eligibility assessment, then clearly you know what the outcome of that will be. The 4th and final report is also a one-time report affiliated with this, and that is that final report. That's going to the complete program narrative, final distribution records, detailed expenditure reports. All of that will be included in that. And any unspent funds that had been received from CSC will be required to be returned by the dates listed there. All of this is in congruence with the fiscal guidelines document that is also published on our website. The last thing that we want to just cover before opening it up for questions and answers is just kind of a description of the timeline for you to fully understand what the expectations are for this procurement. And that is just that I think we shared with you that it's due. I mean, I think we've said it a lot, that it's due on May 8th. So that is a Monday at 6 p.m. Figured we'd give you through the weekend to kind of put the finishing touches on your application. If you need technical assistance, you will need to request that before 5:55 p.m. please, so that if there's something that's happening that you're needing some type of assistance, if it's not working for you, we can certainly work with you, but only if we know it's happening before the deadline. If we receive a call or an email after the deadline, there's literally nothing we can do to assist you. So please don't wait for the last minute to be able to determine if you need some sort of technical assistance. In just a few moments, we'll start going through our questions and answers, but we also have, if you think of another question that you'd like to submit, our written question deadline is Friday, April 14th, by 5 p.m. And then we will answer and post all of the answers on Tuesday, April 18th, including a synopsis of any questions that are asked here today. We then intend to close the application portal, like I said, Monday, May 8th. Provider presentations will be the following week, May 16th and 17th. Our initial evaluations will be completed on Thursday, May 25th. There will be a public meeting with our selection panel on Friday, June 2nd. They will formulate, for this particular procurement, they will formulate recommendations that will go to the council on Thursday, June 15th. And that is where we intend for the council to make those decisions in terms of which proposals that they would like to move forward with. The anticipated contract start date with our current timeline is on Tuesday, August 1st, and it is a 26-month initial contract. So that renewal eligibility assessment will be due on Monday, April 7th, 2025, and that the kind of final contract end date for this initial round is, like we said, September 30th, 2025. We do ask that if you have questions about this particular procurement, that you do not text staff or call staff, that you submit them in writing at procurement@cscleon.org so that we can compile those questions again and submit them all together. Think team that brings us, that brings us to the conclusion of our planned discussion, and now would like to invite Sika to join us for a discussion of the questions that we've received so far.
Thanks, Holly. So I know that was a lot of information you all But that takes us right to the first question. Will we get a link to the recording to view later? So this recording lives and will live on CSC Leon's YouTube channel. And you can access that at youtube.com. And in the search engine, put in at CSC Leon County. So it will be there forever and always. The next question says, just to clarify, it's okay for an organization to apply for different programs, and one may be research proven and the other may be grassroots. So the answer to that is yes. However, you would have to do 2 applications using 2 unique email addresses. So Sika's nonprofit, Sika's organization wants to apply 1 program in grassroots and 1 program in research proven. So I will use Sika Rose at beautiful.com for 1 application and Sika Rose at magnificent.com for the second application. You are required to upload all documents in both applications. So you can't upload them in 1 application and then in the other one say, see the other application. The portal will not allow you to submit unless something is uploaded for each of those attachments that Holly showed you at the end. This all being said, I do want to say that you should definitely put forth the best application for the best program that you have to satisfy what we are trying to achieve with this RFP. However, you are not precluded from submitting separate applications for 2 programs. The next question is, can more than 1 person from an agency enter information into the application? So that answer is yes. However, the application allows you to save. That ability may not be retained if you are opening the application on 2 different computer devices. As you know, each computer has its own internet protocol address, so it's an IP address, and that goes into the whole cookies thing, and that's what allows you to save the information. So if you are going to have more than 1 person entering information, it needs to be done on the same computer. Also know that 2 people cannot be in the application at the same time, obviously, because you need to be on the same computer, and that the functionality of the application is not the same on what is considered a mobile device. So what is a mobile device? It's a phone, it's a tablet, it's a Chromebook, it's anything that functions like a tablet. So our best guidance would be that you use a computer, i.e. a desktop computer or a true laptop computer. Again, let me go back to Holly's statement. If you are getting in that application and early on you are seeing that you're having some difficulties, please let us know sooner than later. Do not wait until 4:45 or 5:45 on the day that the application is due to let us know you're having problems, because that within itself creates an issue. And we are here, Holly is here, Annie is here, Kim is on to help you in any way that we need to do that so that you can get your best application put in. Does the CSC have researchers and statisticians to assist grassroots organizations? So I'm going to turn this one over to Stephanie Eller-Vaughn, because she addressed it a little bit when she was talking about the reporting requirements, your logic model, and all of that. So Stephanie, I'll turn that one over to you.
So, well, we have a partnership with INI and United Partners for Human Services, and they will be providing capacity building services We haven't had the specific question about assistance with statistics or background research, but those are great ideas for us to consider moving forward. I think that the logic model training will be very helpful to you. And then also by checking out that CDC continuum of evidence will be helpful as well. But we personally don't have the staff to assist individual programs. But it's a great question and something we'll look into moving forward.
Thank you, Stephanie. And also understand that for grassroots, so there was a logic, no pun intended, to having the two service lines. So research proven and grassroots, because CSC acknowledges, realizes, and understands that not every program that is making a difference for our children and families and youth in this community is a research proven or evidence-based program. It is born out of a grassroots program. That being said, if and when grassroots programs are selected for funding, it is our idea that as you are complying with the reporting and the monitoring that has to be done of your program, it allows us all in partnership to see if there is a propensity for that program to move up a level and start moving into a research proven program, which thereby could open the program up for even more funding from other areas. So there was a thought behind that. But it's not just, it's a grassroots program and we're going to throw money at it and there's nothing that has to come on the other side. So the suggestion is awesome, and we're putting that on our little list to maybe be able to have some relationship with those types of persons that can literally go in for grassroots program. There is a link here that Holly put in for the logic model training. If you are familiar with CHSP, logic models are required for those applications. So those of you who have investigated that, this should not be foreign. The next question was the RBA. So the RBA is how you come about. Stephanie did an excellent job explaining that. If you have any more questions on results-based accountability, Kim with any can absolutely help you with that. It is our desire as we move forward to incorporate that more and more into our procurement processes so that we have the ability to show true evaluations and be able to do longitudinal studies on how our funded programs are affecting the community.
Tika, may I add to that just very briefly?
Absolutely.
So in the application itself, I don't think RBA is addressed. But it is listed in the procurement. So it gives a few paragraphs of description on it. And I think the citation for where you can find out more is in there as well.
Right. So there is not a box you have to check to say, yes, we'll adhere to. There's nothing like that. This is our, as you're aware, these are our third and fourth procurements. So as we are moving into a space where we kind of get these on a rolling basis, we also want our provider community to rise up right along with us so that we are staying on the edge of how data is reported and, more importantly, how programs are formulated. So there's a problem. How do you go about addressing that problem? The next question is about the children's names. So the children's names are entered into the system and shared with DCF and DJJ. So it depends on the program model and what the outcomes are, what the logic model says, what the results are going to be. Now, I think I know where this question is kind of coming from. What we are trying to do with that parent consent is be able to get as much information about our families and the children contained therein, so that A, if there are other services that they're available, that they are eligible to receive, that can be wrapped around. But B, the only way we're going to be able to know if there was movement, if a family is already involved with DCF or DJJ, is to have that exchange of information. So it depends on your model. For example, we are currently talking with Leon County Schools to have a data sharing agreement with them. But there would be parent consent involved, because for programs where we are trying to measure whether the program is able to sustain summer learning or increase learning or increase performance from one year to the other, we need to have access to how the child performed, either from the parent or through the school. Now, that being said, there is also, for those programs that are chosen, there is a information security piece that you will have to read and use. We have the utmost security as well. So it is our desire to protect that information, to ensure that we don't get that out and deal with all of that as well. So as you move into a space where a program is selected, we can get in deeper on how that reporting looks on the backside and any data sharing that goes on with that. This question, will you be discussing the review process, who is scoring, and how are the groupings being done? And I think it's a suggestion to divide it up by the 6 protective factors. So I'll turn it over to Holly, who's managing our entire procurement process.
Thank you for that, Sika. So in terms of the grouping process, all of those that are under the grassroots application will be grouped together. And all of those that are under just the basic the research supported group will be grouped together. We are not dividing them up by protective factors. We're not looking for a program that only addresses one protective factor. We are using the whole protective factors framework as part of the theoretical underpinnings of program effectiveness, as well as trauma-informed care and family-centered practices. We will be on Monday opening up maybe this weekend, the application process for recruiting evaluators. We had a great group from our most recent procurement, and those that were not selected or did not participate have already expressed interest in rolling over or participating in this next round, and we'll hopefully be tripling the number of volunteers that we recruit for this process, given that we have a lot that are going into family supports. So for this particular application or proposal, there will be 2 groups. The exhibit 2 is very explicit in terms of the scoring, and the scoring for both of them will be the same. We anticipate that the highest scores will be those that are in the research supported category, and that moderate or lower scores would be in the grassroots category, which is why we are separating them and creating 2 recommendations from the evaluation panel. In essence, the majority of the funds upon last discussion with our council, it's approximately 70-30, that 70% of the funds will go to research supported programs, and that the remaining funds would go to the grassroots. It is entirely feasible that some grassroots proposals with an overall lower score than some research supported programs would get funded as opposed to the research supported. Again, our intent is to put the majority of funds in research supported, but to allow an opportunity for those grassroots programs to not be left out, to be a part of the process to help build their evidence. We purposely do not publish the names of the evaluators until after the presentations period is complete, to help with the lobbying prohibition and the cone of silence.
Thanks, Holly, and creating an avenue for our grassroots organization. There we go. And initiatives is directly in line with what the council's direction has been from the time that they incepted and got into a space of looking at what their priorities were, what their categories and the hierarchy of that was. And then I'll just be honest, direct guidance to our staff. And I will tell you, I wholeheartedly agree. Y'all agree. The YouTube link is in the chat as well. So the next question, does the application or proposed project need to include a parent education component, or is it sufficient that it has good outcomes related to family strengthening? So the category is family strengthening / parent education. So you get to decide whether your program leans more toward the family strengthening piece or more toward the parent education. You just need to make sure that as you are inputting your information, the information that you input is supporting whichever way. So the idea is not to get programs that incorporate both family strengthening and parent education, but rather the council understands that in order to strengthen the family, there's an educational component there, right? So you're learning. And then you have some programs that are called parent education programs. And the idea is that they also would strengthen the family. So the short answer is it doesn't have to be labeled as both, if that makes sense. It doesn't have to be labeled as. Next question, adult children of family members are not included in this, correct? Correct. We work with a lot of family members who have adult children dealing with severe mental health conditions. So from the purview of the council, services can be provided to children ages birth up to 24. That being said, with adult children older than 24, would not feed into this model. So let me say that again. We can, the council can serve and has decided that we are aligning with DCF that services can be provided birth up to the turning of age 24. Any adult children over that, especially if you're talking about severe mental illness, that kind of goes into another category that we actually have in family support. We are just working on how we partner to address that. So I hope I answered that question. Don't know who that is. Need you to mute. Okay. Some of us are prohibited under our rules of practice from requiring such release of information in order to provide services. Will that be disqualifying? I think we need to discuss that because I happen to know that this is coming from a lawyer. So if it is a program that is dealing in any way with legal services, obviously there would be some restrictions on that. Again, put in the best application. Those applications will be evaluated. Once we move to the awarding, we are going to work with you for what you have said you're going to do and then how we get that reporting. The reporting may be different depending on what you're saying your outcomes or impacts are going to be. We want to ensure that while we want to have common metrics, when you give an overall picture of what the funding does, we also want to be able to show metrics specific to a model of program, because obviously that builds the case for how that program can work, not only here, but possibly in other areas. The other thing is it also helps to build a case that if it can work in this area, is there a way to tweak it so that it can work in another area? So put your application in and we can talk about any kind of restrictions, because there was also a comment about possibly scaring parents. We get it, and we are not going to end up in let me be very clear when I say this. We are not going to end up in a situation where we are asking you to report something that you absolutely cannot. We will have those discussions so that we can come to an agreement on how that reporting is done, so that we are able to accomplish what we need to as far as showing the impact, and if it feeds into longitudinal studies and impact, without you, like in the case of legal programs, without you compromising what you cannot do legally. I hope that makes sense. All right, in the review process, can we hear the evaluators discuss the evaluations, scorings, and see their written comments or scores afterward? Understand the cone of silence, but the reason CHP provides the names in advance is to identify potential conflicts for the agencies with the reviewers. For example, I had someone placed on a CHSP panel who I had just failed in a class. Oh my goodness. So our process follows the state of Florida procurement process. As such, we are in a cone of silence until you get to the presentation and you're able to see the presenters. That being said, we require all of our, not presenters, evaluators. We require all of our evaluators to sign a disclosure because they will receive the list, names, the applications, and they are required to file a disclosure if there is any perceived or actual conflict of interest. Additionally, if you get to the presentation and you see that one of the evaluators poses a conflict for you, you will let us know and we will be able to handle that accordingly. And that could mean, so ideally what we're trying to do is get enough evaluators so that we have an evaluation team as well as some alternates. We were able to do that this time and it has worked out beautifully. So know that I definitely understand that, but because we are literally following the state of Florida's procurement process, as does many other CSCs, this is why we are doing it this way. And then the first question, in the review process. So the time that you can hear what the scores are and what the evaluator comments are is during that public, I'm calling it a public hearing, but it's not a hearing. The public meeting where the evaluators come together, their scores have been pre-submitted and will be available on our website. So you will see the scores. You then can either come or look at it online to hear what they have to say. They do have the opportunity to write comments that you can receive afterward, or you may actually pull them down offline before the meeting actually occurs. There is an opportunity for public comment during that evaluation meeting. So that is completely open to the public. The other reason we're doing it that way, we did not get to do this with our summer funding last year, but we are allowing for inter-rater reliability so that there can be discussion as to why one may have scored one way, the other may have scored another way. That is the point where they can discuss it and make a determination whether they want their score to stick or they're willing to move one way or the other.
Tika, can I just add that those dates
Yes.
are published in the timeline as well. So that first discussion will be June 2nd. I think as soon as we have the time, we'll publish that too. And then the second meeting where the council will discuss it is on Thursday, June 15th. And that one is their regular business meeting at 4 p.m.
Thank you, Holly. And let me go further by saying the evaluator meeting is for them to give their recommendation. That is not the final determination of the council. At the council's meeting, they make the final determination of what is to be funded. They may ask staff's recommendation, or they may not. So we encourage everybody, be a part of those meetings for sure. I don't see.
Brings us to the end.
Yeah, I don't see any more questions in the chat, but that does not mean that question period is done. Please use procurement@cscleon.org. You have until April 14th to submit written questions. April 14th at 5 o'clock, not 5:01, not 5:02, y'all. So 5 o'clock to submit those questions. We will get those answered and get them published on the website. Before I let you go, that sounds like Beyonce, doesn't it? Before I let you go, let me say again, we are giving ample time to get these applications in. Our I don't want to say research because we haven't researched. What we know is, Stephanie, Holly, Dina, Sika, Jacinta, we know that for those organizations that participate in these informational sessions, that take advantage of asking questions, that use any and UPHS at our expense, you don't have to pay for that, that participate in the budgeting workshops, tend to do better than those who do not. So don't let this be the last time that you get information. The minute you get in that application and you are having problems or struggles, reach out, because people, an email at 4:59, no, when is it close? 6. At 5:59 on the deadline date is not going to get answered. I'm just gonna tell y'all. We can't do extensions. We can't do any of that. If we discover in the process that there is something that has gone awry, we will notify all applicants and give all applicants whatever opportunity we deem necessary to ensure that we have a process that is fair and impartial. So with that, I sure appreciate you all joining us. I don't know if we were planned for an hour and a half, but I hope that it was a good use of your time. We are so excited to see these applications that are going to come in. And I think the thing that is most exciting is that we will have some wonderful programming that kicks off right before school starts for our children, youth and families in Leon County. So thank you all. Have a fabulous weekend, and we are looking forward to seeing your application.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes today's webinar.